So I sent around some clipboards if anybody wants to sign up. I'm going to send out a longer version of what I'm about to show you. And I have a distribution bulletin that I send out every few months when something good happens in independent distribution. And I'll include you. There's about 9,000 people around the world getting it now, so I'd be glad if you wanted to join them. So we have 15 minutes. So the idea is to cram as many ideas and as much information as possible in the next 15 minutes. So can we turn up the lights in the house just for a minute? I want to ask people, once I can see you all. Okay, so if you're an independent filmmaker, raise your hand. And okay, keep them up and let me define independent. So first, independent is having the resources to make the movies you're passionate about and not having to chase money every time. Okay, keep your hand up. There's one hand left. Or no, a few. Okay, second, being independent is the opportunity to make a distribution strategy and pick and choose distribution partners, not have to chase distribution. Okay, hand went up there. And third, being independent is having a self-sustaining career that actually you can pay the rent. Okay, so one hand over there. That's great. Okay, so let me show you a spectrum of independence. And the idea is that on one end we have the totally dependent filmmaker, and on the other end is the truly independent filmmaker. And I'm going to give you some ideas and some suggestions about how you can move further toward true independence today. The first thing I want to just give you a couple slides on is the life of the truly dependent filmmaker, totally dependent filmmaker. So that's a part of a lot of lives. These slides are made by a friend of mine who's an independent filmmaker, so she's lived all these realities. Her name is Tara Veneruso. This is just the idea of trying to sustain a career and kind of keep going. And then this is what it may lead to, where you're kind of choosing projects based on what you think is commercial, and maybe projects that in this case grow out of your own personal experience. Okay, so let's talk about audience, because I think audience is the thing that a lot of people don't understand and don't make the greatest use of. So let's talk about degrees of separation from your audience. So here's the traditional all rights deal, where you've got a producer's rep, you've got a distributor, they make a deal with the theater, and here's the audience over here. So there's your 4 degrees of separation from the audience. You can add the financial dimension. So you can see the money comes in at the box office and it kind of shrinks and shrinks and shrinks till it gets to the filmmaker. Now, the other extreme is where the filmmaker is 1 degree of separation from an audience. So basically, in this case, the filmmaker's selling DVDs, downloads, and streams directly from their website. There's no middle people between the filmmaker and the audience. And here's another example where you're doing a screening tour, going around the country, and you're booking the theater, you're four-walling the theater for a night, and then audiences are coming there and you're dealing with them directly. Now, there's the financial dimension, which you can see, but there's also the fact that if you have direct connection with an audience, you can learn a lot, you can build a relationship with that audience, with those members. Okay, so let's think of essential audiences, 3 different kinds of essential audiences. So at the bottom we have core audiences. These are audiences that are pre-existing, groups of people, online, communities, organizations, and those are folks that you need to think about before you start. Then this is the idea of building an audience around your film. So in the case of Note by Note, which is a documentary on the making of a Steinway piano, I asked Ben Niles, the filmmaker, to make a chart of his ecosystem of audience. And you don't have to study this chart, but there's the one example that I think is the most fun is piano technicians, second down on the left. Those are piano tuners. Ben found out that piano tuners in the United States have an annual convention, and he went to Anaheim and showed it to 750 piano tuners, and Since then, they've been telling the people whose pianos they tune about his movie. That's going directly to a core audience. This is a film called American Meat. And I asked Graham, the filmmaker, to make a chart of his ecosystem of audience, and this is how he did it. I think all of you need to be thinking about who the core audiences are for your movie. From the morning, you dream up the project in the shower and go forward and start reaching out to those audiences, testing those audiences, and ultimately harnessing those audiences. So, okay, so you've built an audience around your film, and then this is what I'd like to happen. That you take that audience with you to the next film, and then it gets bigger, and then, you know, for the third film, it's even bigger. And to the extent that you can build a personal audience for your work, it's going to increase your independence in a number of ways. And I want to talk to you about, you know, what those ways are. So this is my friend Tara, who drew the slides. Maybe we could give her a round of applause in absentia. Okay, so we're going to go through some quick examples of people that have been out there recently and doing this with an audience. So let's start with a film called Burn. Any of you know Burn? It's a film about firefighters in Detroit. The film won the Audience Award at Tribeca, and the filmmakers initially were hoping to get a traditional all rights distribution deal, and no all rights distribution deals showed up. So the filmmakers said, okay, well, let's do a screening tour. We're going to go out to theaters directly. We're going to do one night or 2 nights in a city. We're going to rent the theater, sell tickets online. So in the first 25 cities, they were already in the black on the movie. And they kept going. Then they did a few week runs where they played in a theater for a week. And they realized they were basically making no money doing that. So they went back to single special event screenings. They eventually played 170 cities, and at this point, at last I heard, the box office gross on the movie was $1.3 million, and that's their money, because there was nobody in between them and the theater. Now they had some expenses renting the theaters and, you know, getting to the screenings, but that was doing it themselves. They had a core audience. There's 1.8 million firefighters in the United States, and obviously they have families and friends. So when they started reaching their core audience effectively. Okay, then eventually it came out on DVD and digitally, and the film has done tremendously well on iTunes, tremendously well digitally. And so that's when they're now crossing over to a more general audience. On iTunes, they wanted the movie described as an action film, not as a documentary. And I think at one point it was the number 9 action film on iTunes. And then if you go to their website, you'll see all the other things that they've had to sell. And when they were in theaters, they had, I think, t-shirts and some posters. And they also had a DVD, but this is interesting. It wasn't a DVD of the movie because they were going to wait. So they created a DVD of outtakes, and the title was something like Too Hot to Handle. And so they sold DVDs in the theater, and about 1/3 of the people who came to those theaters bought something in addition to buying a ticket. And they charged $20 a ticket as an admission price because it was a special event. So you can charge more than you would charge, you know, in a regular theater ticket situation. Okay, the next example is Bones Brigade. Some of you are aware of that, Stacy Peralta's movie, sort of early days of skateboarding. The film started at Sundance. Stacy was leaning toward doing it directly, splitting up the rights, and then he saw some anemic offers at Sundance, so he said, okay, we're going to do it directly. So when Stacy, even though Stacy's made movies for years and has, you know, a lot of history, he never built a mailing list. So he basically started with no mailing list. So what did they do? They teamed up with Topspin, and Topspin said, okay, what we're going to do is give something away for free to build the mailing list. So there was a documentary that Stacy had done in the 80s called The Search for Animal Chin, which was an early skateboarding documentary. It wasn't available, and they said, anybody who wants to download the movie for free, come on down, just give us your name and email address, and you can have the movie. So within a very short period of time, they had almost 50,000 people who had downloaded the movie and given them their name and email address and essentially permission to market to them. So that was your sort of out and building an instant audience around the movie. Then they started doing a lot of promotion to those people online. And at a certain point, before they came out, and they also did a screening, a tour that went very well. But before they released the movie on DVD and digitally, they had a month of pre-sales. And in the month of pre-sales, they were reaching that core audience again that they built around the movie. And they were selling the film, and they were also selling bundles where they were selling other things that were only available from the filmmaker's website. So you couldn't buy these things anywhere else. And in that month, I think the average purchase was something like $109. The DVD, I think, was $20. The download was $10. $30 got you, I don't know, the Blu-ray and a poster and things like that. But they had other things too. So then they reached that core audience really effectively, and the pre-orders were sales. They were people were putting in their credit card and buying these things that they weren't going to get for a few weeks. And then when the official street date came, then it was on iTunes and everywhere. And the film did great with the core audience and has done really, really well with the general audience. Stacy's made more money on this film than he's made on any film ever. He has the copyright of the movie, so for years to come, the film is going to be generating revenue for him. He's got a mailing list, and now it's over 50,000 people, and so that's a group of people that he can take with him to his next film. So the next example is Indie Game the Movie. Some people familiar with Indie Game the Movie? Okay, movie about making independent video games. The filmmakers who are based in Winnipeg, so they have no prior track record, they have no prior core audience, they're just starting at zero. When they started, they had 0 people on their mailing list, and they did a lot of things along the way while they were making the movie. They created free content that people on the mailing list got once a month, so these were kind of outtakes, from the movie. Or things that were great but weren't going to be in the ultimate feature. Before by the time they came to doing their screening tour, they had a list of 30,000 people. And that was a quality list that they built kind of person by person along the way. The movie started at Sundance, got some kind of conventional offers, they weren't interested. So they did a screening tour of 15 cities. They sold tickets online. One of the things about selling tickets online is you get the names and email addresses of everybody who comes to your film. And the screening tour did very well. Adobe sponsored it. They worked with local organizations and got the word out. And then they had a really short window because they were concerned about piracy. And then they released the movie digitally on iTunes from their website and through a platform called Steam, which up until then had just made video games available to people. It was the first movie that was ever on Steam. And they did really, really well. They've continued to do well. They've continued to build their mailing list. They just put out a special edition of the film, which has, I think, another, hour and a half of additional material. They've gotten people around the world to translate the film. It's now available in 25 languages. This is all crowdsourced translations. And because they're making the movie available digitally, they can make it available from their website in 25 languages. The costs, are really minimal. And people, their fans around the world have been happy to help with those translations. So they're now in a situation where they have a big enough audience when they want to make their next film. They could do some combination of self-financing and fan financing, so they don't really need to look for money. They can pick and choose their distribution partners, and they're definitely in a self-sustaining career mode, and this is just with one film. Okay, 2 more examples. So I have 2 minutes left. I'm going to have to talk fast. Gary Hustwit, who made the Helvetica trilogy, the design trilogy, Helvetica, Objectified and then Urbanized, 3 films on design. when he started out, built a core audience, took the movie out, did screening tours, selling. He told me that when he did a screening tour, he'd play one night in a city, do 2 screenings at $500 a piece, charge $20 or $25 a ticket, and make more in one night than he could playing in a theater for 3 months. And then with Gary, he shifted by the second film into kind of Twitter mode, started using Twitter to connect with his core audience around the world in terms of finding people to shoot stuff for him. They'd upload the footage, come up with crowdsourced ideas for the movie. And the final segment in Urbanized is somebody that sent in a story about Stuttgart, and he went there, and it's the ending of his movie. So he was talking about all the ways that his audience has helped him in making his movies, not just funding them. And the last example is a film called Hungry for Change. And this is a case, the filmmakers had made one movie before called Food Matters. They'd sold it online. Eventually, they sold, I think, about 240,000 DVDs online. When they came to release Hunger for Change, they said, okay, we're going to make it available free to anybody who wants to watch it worldwide for 10 days. And in those 10 days, over 450,000 people watched the movie in almost 180 countries. So they doubled their mailing list. They started with a mailing list of 169,000 people, and then it went to 329,000 people through the free availability. And at the same time, they said, and by the way, if you want to buy a DVD or a recipe book, you can do that. In 2 weeks, they sold over $1 million of DVDs and recipe books. So this was stage 1 of their distribution. Now they've proved they've got a worldwide audience, so they come to the United States. They're able to make a deal both with a distributor, a home video distributor, even though they'd already released it online, and with a publisher. So the book came out, they did a book that came out at the same time as the DVD and digital release of the film. It's done extremely well. And now these filmmakers, again, are on that end of the spectrum, the truly independent end, where they can self-finance their movies, they can choose distribution partners, and they're definitely living in a self-sustaining career. So I'm going to just show you one last slide. Okay, so the basic idea here is how your audience can help you be more independent. So with funding, you obviously know about crowdfunding. Those are just 2 examples. Revenues, it's the revenues from screenings, pre-sales, direct sales, and third-party retail sales. Then with marketing, obviously, people can be spreading the word, spreading your trailer, your teasers, your links, blogging about your film, doing reviews and ratings on Amazon, IMDb, and Netflix. Then crowdsourcing, and Gary's the best example of this, the Ideas and Segments crew, crowdsourcing music, translations I mentioned, and also content for your website. This feedback thing is really important, and I think that when you start, if you do crowdfunding early, you're going to be getting feedback on your crowdfunding video and your campaign, and as you go, you keep testing and refining your knowledge of your audience. In the case of Burn, they put some cut scenes online, and people responded to those cut scenes, and a couple characters that the people really responded to from the scenes became larger in the ultimate film because they realized that they were getting such a reaction. And you can obviously imagine crowdsourcing, getting feedback on music and posters. Then with connections, this is how your audience can help you connect you with nonprofit organizations and partners, sponsors, donors, and investors, and then websites and mailing lists. And then last but not least is things that you can get from your audience in terms of equipment, facilities, and locations. There's other examples out there, but I can say to you that the ways the audience can help you, are just amazing. So let's go back to the truly dependent filmmaker, and then this is where I hope you can get to eventually. So on the right side, we have your distribution partnerships with different companies in terms of digital, DVD, and TV. And over here is the things that you can do directly from your website, going directly to your fans and touring. So I hope this gave you some ideas about how to harness an audience and to become more independent. And I wish you well becoming truly independent. Thank you very much.